Jaws, the movie that made everyone afraid to go in the water and ensured that a whole generation of kids would rather risk heat stroke on the beach than dip so much as a toe in the ocean. And here we are, 50 years later, still celebrating what is arguably one of the greatest films ever made. Hard to believe, but Jaws is officially a half a century old this year. It's got an AARP card, it's yelling at kids to get off its lawn, and it's still terrifying the hell out of people. After 50 years, what can be said about this movie that hasn't already been said? So I'm just going to jump on a few highlights and points of interest. Jaws is one of my all-time favorite movies. I developed an interest in sharks at a very early age when I was almost eaten by one while swimming in the ocean with a friend. I mean, there's nothing quite like being in open water, seeing a fin come up to the surface, and watching it circle you. I lived the movie before it was a movie. Now, for the three of you out there who don't know the plot, here it is in its simplest form. Giant shark shows up, eats people, and a few guys have to go out and kill it. That's it. And yet somehow that straightforward premise became a cinematic masterpiece.
But in recent days, a cloud has appeared on the horizon of this beautiful resort community. A cloud in the shape of a killer shark.
Who knew that watching a rubber fish terrorize a New England beach town could be so compelling? And speaking of New England, Jaws was mostly shot on location in Martha's Vineyard because Spielberg apparently thought, you know what would make this easier? Let's film everything on the ocean where we have zero control over anything. Brilliant choice. The production was an absolute disaster. The budget started at $4 million, ballooned to $9 million, the schedule all shot to hell, and the shark, the 3 mechanical Bruces that were built, none of them worked, not a single one. It broke down so often that the crew named the film Flaws. At one point, the orca, the boat, not the whale, literally started sinking with the actors on board. Honestly, the real horror here was probably the making of Jaws. But you know what? That malfunctioning shark is what made the movie scary. Because it barely worked, Spielberg had to get creative. Instead of showing the shark, he suggested its presence. A ripple in the water, a floating barrel, a pair of terrified eyes looking down. And of course, John Williams' now iconic score. 2 notes that overcrowded swimming pools for everyone. That theme alone won Williams an Academy Award because, let's be honest, if Jaws had been released with a kazoo soundtrack, it would have been a totally different experience. Now let's talk casting. The producers wanted big-name actors, and Spielberg said no because he wanted audiences to believe that these people were real people, not celebrities on a boat. Enter Roy Scheider, who got the part of Brody after overhearing Spielberg talking about a scene where the shark jumps onto the boat. He basically cast himself. Richard Dreyfuss originally passed and then saw another movie that he was in and hated his performance so much that he begged for the role. And Robert Shaw, he didn't even like the book, but took the part because his wife told him to. Honestly, Jaws might not have happened if Robert Shaw had just been a little more stubborn. And in case you were wondering how deep the insanity ran during production, at one point, the filmmakers actually considered training a real great white shark for the movie. Yeah, that lasted about 5 minutes before someone went, wait, we can't even train a dog to stop eating garbage. Maybe we shouldn't try this with a 2,000-pound killing machine. Now, when Jaws finally hit theaters in June of 1975, it became the highest-grossing film of all time, until Star Wars came along 2 years later and stole its thunder. But still, Jaws paved the way for the modern summer blockbuster. It made over $100 million in just 59 days, and Hollywood suddenly realized, wait a minute, people like action-packed, simple, high-concept movies? We should make more of these. And thus the era of the mega blockbuster was born. Of course, with success comes sequels, and boy did they try. Jaws 2 was okay, Jaws 3D was an experiment, and Jaws the Revenge, let's just say that's the one where the shark literally follows Brody's family to the Bahamas out of spite. It makes no sense, And I love it for that.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Combined, the sequels barely made half of what the original Jaws did, which is Hollywood's way of saying, yeah, we probably should have just stopped after 1. Now, if you're a Jaws superfan like me, you'll be thrilled to know that the Martha's Vineyard Museum announced that it's opening an exhibition this summer featuring rare behind-the-scenes photos, original props, and stories from locals who got to witness the madness firsthand. And if you ever get a chance to visit Martha's Vineyard, do it. I went a few years ago, and let me tell you, everything looks exactly the same as it did in the movie. I even stayed at the Harborview Hotel, where the cast stayed. It was like stepping into 1975, minus the constant fear of being eaten. And before I wrap up, I've got to mention the great debate that has raged on for decades. Is Jaws a horror movie? Some people say no, it's a thriller, an adventure film. Others say yes, it has a monster, it has suspense, it has people getting chomped in the worst way possible. Personally, I say it's a horror movie. If a film keeps millions of people out of the water for decades, it's horror. Case closed. Anyway, happy 50th anniversary to Jaws. It's still one of the greatest films of all time, still terrifying, still endlessly watchable. Now, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell because, let's be honest, if you've made it this far, you clearly have excellent taste. So thanks for watching. Now, go enjoy the beach, if you dare.